Well, hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Real Estate Investing. I'm your host, Sharon Vornholt, and I'm so glad you're joining us today. My guest today is Utah investor Andy McFarland. This is the third time Andy's been on the show. Each time he has such great information to share, and I'm excited to talk to him again today. Andy is the owner of Enlight Home Buyers, a residential real estate investment company that buys and sells more than 200 houses a year across Utah, New Mexico, and Indiana. Andy's been buying properties since 2003, and he's been involved in over 1,700 real estate transactions. He currently lives in Farmington, Utah with his wife and 4 children. Welcome, Andy.
Hey, thanks, Sharon. Thanks for having me back. I didn't realize this was the third time. Third time's
the charm. It is, but you know, it's so weird because, well, we talked before the show about where you were and where I am, and it was the last time was 2015.
Oh, wow.
I cannot believe it's been that long.
Wow. A lot has changed since then. Wow.
Yeah, a lot has changed. So when I was looking back at them, your first podcast with me was how to wholesale 100 houses a year. So you've more than doubled that. That was actually in 2015 too. Then the next time we talked about adding team members, and I still remember that show because I talk about that show all the time because people will talk about team members, and I'll say, well, you have to decide, each business is different. But I always remember that you said you were the last, the acquisition manager was the last person you added because you like doing that. So you have no idea how many times I've told that story.
Really?
But yes, but today, so you've moved up another notch into a business owner. And for the folks that want to go back and listen to those shows, I'll put a link to those shows in the show notes because they are still great shows. They're still great shows to help you get from one step to the next step. But let's start out today, Andy, and have you tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
For sure. No, and I appreciate that. I love that you took me down that memory lane too, the first show, the second show, and third, because they are still relevant. Yes. But like you said, 2015, man, a lot has changed since then. Where I am right now, you read that bio, which was great, and those things are true. And the 1,700 houses, I don't really know how many it is, but it's been at least that. But yeah, like you said, my primary business is buy and sell houses, mostly wholesale them in 3 different states. Utah, because I live here, New Mexico, and Indiana. Been there for a while now, 4 and 5 years, doing those profitably and successfully in those markets. And besides that, so that's my core business that most people want to talk about, and that might be what we talk about today. But besides that, I also do some other stuff. I have rental properties. I've been a part of different rental syndications, buying apartment complexes and some storage units. So I started doing that. Have a digital marketing company that helps real estate investors from PPC, SEO, and Facebook to drive motivated seller leads. It's just kind of a small niche thing we do. And then also I'm a part of a mastermind, which I think you know about that. Me and Justin Williams started it, but Bill Allen has been the guy the last 2 years that's running it, and he's amazing. And I'm proud to be a part of that community, and I do that. So those are kind of the businesses I'm involved in. And other than that, I spend a lot of time as a husband and father and just relaxing with my family, and I enjoy that. And we were talking before this, that you said, well, Andy, I used to have this YouTube channel called I Love Real Estate Stories. Some people might recognize that. Most people probably won't. I haven't done a video, and you were surprised. You're like, it's been 4 years. It has been 4 years since I've done a video. And I did videos for 3 years, and that was fun, and it was a place and a time, but I haven't done that in a while. So thanks for bringing me down memory lane.
Well, I had to go back and look, and I didn't actually remember that we had done the first 2 shows in such a short time span. I remembered the shows though. So that says a lot to you, because I remember the shows, and I remember the information that you gave me when we were talking about adding team members, because I get that question a lot. And my first question was actually to ask you if you were still only wholesaling or if you had rentals. So how did you end up in Indiana, which is right next to me, by the way, because I'm in and then New Mexico. So that's like kind of far apart.
Yeah. And Louisville, by the way, I own part of 2 apartment complexes in Louisville, Kentucky. So I appreciate Louisville as well.
Oh, well, listen, next time you're in town, I saw that Peely and Jason had swept through here. So I'm going to hunt y'all down if y'all don't call me next time.
Peely, so I'm a part of those deals with them too. I know them, obviously. So how did I end up in Indiana? So It kind of came from the YouTube channel. So those of you that are thinking about doing some social media stuff, it's a two-edged sword. It takes a lot of time and effort. As Sharon knows, she's done so much content and provides so much value to the real estate community. And we do that, and I did that to provide value to people. But the value that sometimes it provides back to me, and maybe Sharon can speak to this too, is it provides, people that want to reach out to you, maybe do different deals with you, partner with you, and in some way we can add value to each other. So through doing my I Love Real Estate Stories YouTube channel, I had people reach out to me, and I had somebody reach out to me that happened to be in Indiana, and they said, hey, come to Indiana, turn your system on here, let me help you here, and let's do business here. And I said, look, my system works, and I've got a back end team and office, and we can do a lot of that stuff remotely. I said, all I need for somebody on the ground is an acquisition person, basically, somebody that can meet with sellers. And they said, well, I can do that. I can do that. So I said, okay. So I came there with them doing the acquisitions, and it was about, they worked about 3 months, and they wanted to do a lot of other things in the business. I said, I just need you to focus on the acquisitions. And then when I started turning on leads and working the system, they ultimately, after 3 months, that person said, I don't want to work this hard. Like you're giving me way too many leads. I don't want to work this hard, So ultimately they ended up deciding that they wanted to do their own thing and have business on their own terms. But that's how I got to Indiana. And then when they chose to leave the team, we didn't leave Indiana. We'd already had set up and put a bunch of time, effort, and energy into it. So we just stayed. We just hired a replacement, and we've been there for 4 or 5 years now.
So what part are you up around Indy? Okay.
Yep. Indianapolis area, 2 million kind of metropolitan area there around.
That's a big area, but it's a good area.
It is. It is. And you mentioned something earlier too. You said, do you still wholesale a lot, or do you flip? Primarily, like for years, I've been probably a 90% wholesaler. But this year, I've probably did about 25% flips. So in 3 states, we did about 200 houses, but we did about 50 of those were flips across the Utah, New Mexico, and Indiana. So we are, and that was because with COVID happening, a lot of our buyers, they kind of got skittish and apprehensive. March, April, May, you might have seen this too. So what we did, we were confident in the numbers, we were confident in the market. We never stopped marketing, and we chose to buy those, keep them internally, and fix them up and sell them. And as you guys know, depending on when you're listening to this, that was a great strategy because the market has come up dramatically. So now we're able to sell them at this point from a retail flip standpoint for higher than we even thought. So, and
you just said something that I hammer home all the time. We never stopped marketing. You cannot turn off your marketing machine, because then it's way harder to get it started again.
Yep.
So let me ask you this. You have gone from, you were in the onesie twosie camp, for everybody starts there, or 10 and 12 and then 50, whatever it is. Did you always have a dream to build a big business, or did it just kind of happen?
It happened. I never had this dream. Sharon, I would be lying if I told you that I said I saw this vision of hundreds of houses a year. I didn't. It was, for me, it was kind of step by step. It was line upon line that just kind of came to me. I didn't, and I'd say line upon line came to me. People were put into my life that helped that happen. And the people kept continuing to be put in my life. Anything that I am today from a real estate perspective, from like what we do, I attribute it all to the team. Because I've said this before, and I'll say this again to you, that my success is not, Andy doesn't flip 200 houses a year. My team does. And everybody on my team that sits in those different seats, that if you're a onesie twosie, you sit in every single one of those seats. And I did that once 2 years ago. Every single person on my team right now holds that seat better and performs better in that seat ever than I did, than I ever did. I was never as good as any single one of them in those seats. So all of my success right now from that business, I would attribute to everyone on the team. It is not me, truly. It's not me.
Well, it's really hard to be perfect at all of them. You can put someone in there that's perfect at one piece of it. And that's the thing I think so many people have wrestled with over time, we'll say that. They just find it hard to give up, the control, because it's not exactly like they would do it. But I think you nailed another really important thing. They're better at it than you are, because that's their sole focus.
Yes, absolutely. It's their sole focus. And there's certain things that we like to do. We all have different skills and talents and abilities. Our superpower, people might call it. And my superpower, I don't know that it really matters what I feel like mine was, but I wasn't the best at answering the phone. I wasn't the best at transaction coordination, those type of things. And the marketing, putting together the marketing and the consistency of that stuff. So having people in those seats that consistently do the things better than me, that if I can say anything about what my team is, one, it's the team. It's the people I've surrounded myself with that have been going to come into the system. And two, it's been consistency. Because we have bad months and we have great months. And I kind of clip off the highs and lows and just say, guys, we're consistent. We're just going to do this thing. We're consistent. That's what we've been.
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle. And I tell my guys all the time, when we're low, when it's the low side, when it feels like it's so competitive, we can't get a deal, this and that. I say, guys, we've been here before. I call it the real estate roller coaster. When you're on the low side of the roller coaster, I said, don't believe the lows. But I said, also, guys, when we're on the top of it, because you have months where it's just like things all happen to hit in one month. I said, don't believe that either. Don't believe the highs. You start, expecting that as like normal. No, just be grateful for it, but recognize the highs and the lows are going to even out. And you're going to have this consistency, hopefully, over the time of the years. And that's what I've seen, But it's easy to get caught up in it, and like, oh, it's a great month and I'm on top of the world. And like, oh, I didn't get a deal this month,
Right,
so.
right. And it is that way. It's the law of averages.
It is, absolutely is. But everyone goes on a podcast or wherever they share on Facebook, and they show the picture of the $80,000 check, which is absolutely it's abnormal. It's the one. But if you're out there swinging every day, you're going to get those. Like, I certainly have those deals. But what I don't show you, and well, I'm not out there posting on social media, but what you don't see is the average is like, it's the $10,000 wholesale deal you got, and the 5, and you're 15, but you're going to talk about the 100. I got the 100, right? But that was the 1%. That was definitely not the average that you're doing,
Did you have trouble letting go of the work, or were you so it was easy to let go of the things, like you said, the parts that you didn't like, that weren't really, you were happy to get rid of those. What about that final piece, the acquisition manager? I know you loved doing that. Was that hard to let go of?
Yeah, that was hard to let go of because of my limiting belief that's where the rubber hits the road. And like, you can do all these things, but until you get a signed contract, until you can buy it at a price that makes sense, because you make your money on the buy, until you do that, like, nothing else matters. And I could do that, and I'd proven I could do that over the years. So to let that go to somebody else, it was a little bit nerve-wracking. But the first acquisition manager that I had came with me on a few different appointments, watched me do it, and they felt confident they could. And luckily for me, that she was really good, and that she signed contracts very quickly. So she was able to get those. She was very good at that as well. So that gave me a good belief that, okay, somebody else can do this besides me. And then we were able to branch out into other states, because obviously proximity wise, I can't be in New Mexico and Indiana.
Right.
So, but yeah, I needed to see that. I needed my faith to become acknowledged with one person that says, I can do this. And what happened with that, I haven't told this story in a long time, but it's a girl. Remember, she came with me, and I kind of showed her how I was doing it. She came with me like 3 appointments. And then I needed to come back to one of those appointments we've been on. And then we had another appointment. So I had like lots of stuff going on. And she said to me, she said, look, she says, I get it. She says, you go back to that one we were just at. Let me go to this other one. And I'm like, okay. And that was it. I never went with her again. She went and signed that one up. And then we just kept going from there. Now, she didn't sign up every one she went to, like nobody does. But she just proved to me there. She's just like, I get it. And she did it a little different than me, but she did it. She understood the end goal where she needed to be. So she's just like, let me do it. Let me get there my own way. And she was great. So it was a blessing to me that she came into the company at that time. So
wow. Yeah, I think that's everybody's fear, that you're going to work so hard to get the leads. You're going to spend the money on marketing. You're going to generate the lead, and then that person is not going to be able to walk away with a contract ever.
It's a valid fear. And I've had multiple different acquisition people that have come in and out of our company. And we've had some that have not been successful, that you put in, and you kind of don't know for almost like the first 30, 60 days, 90 days sometimes till they can actually do it, because they got to get their legs underneath them. It's a different business. It's a different business. And sometimes we've had some we've invested 90 days, 120 days into them, and they just couldn't do it. For whatever reason, they couldn't do it. And we did the profiles and all the stuff, and we thought they were good, and they just couldn't do it for whatever reason. But it wasn't a waste, right? Because you just go through that process, and then you find the ones that are good. And I've had acquisition managers with me, one for 4 years, 3 years. Some of them have stayed quite a while. So yeah. So don't give up. If you're out there listening, like, don't give up if you haven't found the right one yet. There are people out there that can do this. And I promise you, there are people that can do it better than you. If you think you're the best, I don't know that I ever thought that I was the best, but I could do it, definitely. I could definitely do it. There are people out there that can do it as well or better than you. I promise you that, if you're listening. If that's all you get from today, it's possible.
So there are people that they're just so reluctant to pull the trigger. They can't envision how they're going to supervise these people, how they're going to hold them accountable. Well, with an acquisition manager, they're either bringing in deals or not. But what about the other people behind the scenes? Did you develop systems or processes for keeping these people accountable or meeting benchmarks, or how did all of that work?
Yeah, and it depends on the team member too, how you kind of can track that. So I'm fortunate enough, and I've been for the last few years. I've got a COO, an operations guy who is phenomenal. He's really good. So he is definitely managing the people. So there are some benchmarks and metrics that we look at, but he kind of looks at that with them. It's tougher these days with COVID. We're all working remote, right? But he's got those. So he is having the more day-to-day interaction with them and managing them. But yeah, so that's like, for me, I'm like a step removed from that, which is good. But you kind of know, right? Like we've gone over the years of some really tight like KPIs for individuals, and we've gone where we've been a little more loose, because once you kind of get a trust with the people, you know they're kind of doing what they're supposed to be doing. But yeah, you kind of know, and especially acquisition managers, if they're not, you know, they're signing contracts or not, and then are they putting notes in the Podio? Are your lead intake team or whatever you end up calling them, are they getting calls back from sellers saying, hey, where's your person? They're supposed to be here. They weren't here. They never called me back. You get a couple of those, and you know, okay, they're not doing it.
They're not doing it. Well, I assumed you had a COO because even in a digital business, the first time I heard Amy Porterfield talking about it was her COO, but she called her girl an integrator. So Amy was kind of over here where you are, and then her integrator was named Chloe, and Chloe managed all the pieces, all the people. And so I think that is the spot where I think that's where everybody should aspire to get to. Even if you don't aspire to do 200 deals a year, you can get there on a much smaller scale. But I don't think any of us got in this business to work ourselves to death. So there's got to be some sort of a roadmap or a plan to grow so that you can get yourself out of doing every job in the business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've heard a lot of people that they do aspire to that integrator position or the COO position. To have somebody like that in your life, that is a unique person. But they are out there as well, people that want to be in the details and want to be involved with that, and they want to run the stuff, right? They don't want to be the visionary of it. But I attribute so much of my success to the people that have come into the company. And the one that is my integrator, my COO, he's amazing. Like, he's a really, really good friend. And we've been able to make the two of us together, as they say in I forget what, it's what's it called? I'm looking up here. Rocket Fuel. Yeah, it's Rocket Fuel. That Rocket Fuel book. So if those of you who know, Gino Wickman wrote that EOS Entrepreneur Operating System. He wrote Traction, but he's got a book called Rocket Fuel, which talks about the visionary and the integrator, the relationship there. So you've got a visionary who typically start businesses but are bad at follow-up. They can't manage people as well, things like that. But when you get the visionary with an integrator together who's kind of good at the pieces and the daily stuff and the managing things, you get the two of them together, it can be like Rocket Fuel. And I definitely would say that is true in my business, that my integrator, really good friend, but he has been the rocket fuel in the business. And I definitely couldn't have done what I've done without him. So I'm super grateful for him and everyone on the team, but specifically him.
Yeah, I think that's true though, because a lot of us, we're really good at starting things, but we'd rather not have to do all the follow-up pieces. So, and if you're trying to do all of that and that's not your skill set, things are falling through the cracks on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And there's some people that are the perpetual starters, right? They've got all these ideas and they go start something and then they go with something else and something else. They never have that consistency because they need somebody behind them to say, hey, that's a great idea. That's a great start, but we need to keep doing A, B, and C consistently every day and every week. And that's where the integrators come in. They put a system around it and say, okay, make sure these things actually happen. When the visionary is often like a shiny object, like, I'm going to start this, I'm going to start that, I'm going to do these things, But the visionary is needed. You got to have the person that can say, hey, I can see this happen. Let's go do this. Let's make this happen, right? They have that kind of push, but the integrator comes behind it and makes it organized out of the mess that the visionary makes sometimes.
You just nailed it. That's exactly right. So let's talk about technology. What part does technology play? Technology's changed a lot in 5 years, 6 years. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I hear people that are so afraid of technology. And my take on it is you just got to suck it up and do it anyway. And even if you're going to outsource it, you still have to have a basic understanding of what the heck you're outsourcing, or what that job description over here is going to look like. You can't be completely ignorant of the process. At least that's my feeling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Technology, from every aspect of the business. From a marketing standpoint, we could talk about that. We get a lot of our leads from online, which I think years ago, Facebook leads, you're not going to get that. SEO, that's been around for a while, but how to optimize that stuff, pay-per-click, both Google and Ping pay-per-click, those type of things were not as much around years ago. So those are integral parts of our business. And then, I mean, let's talk about 2020, the COVID year, technology of you guys are just listening to us, but Sharon and I are on a Zoom call right now. We're staring at each other. It's like she's in my office. And this is the same interaction I have with everybody on my team. Since March, we have an office, physical office. Since March, nobody's been in that office. So we do our team meetings via Zoom. We have meetings a few times a week, and a sales rep meeting. I was just on one this morning with all of our sales reps, and we sat there and all of us talked face to face via Zoom. And we plugged our numbers into a Google Drive document, right? Like, that's just how our world is now. And without Zoom, without Google Docs, and without Podium and all that technology that we're using, like, but with it, nothing changed. Like we're running the office and it's fine. It's totally fine, you know?
I think it's going to be curious to see how we go back to doing business. I think everybody is so anxious to have physical contact with people and to be able to sit in a room and do those things. But there's no doubt that we know that we don't have to have that to do business and to be profitable in business. So I think that in itself is a big mindset shift. Stop and think back to 20 years ago if we'd been in this situation. If things, you'd be nowhere. Where would you be without all the technology?
Grinding halt. You would have been a grinding halt without the brick and mortar, without the Zooms and the cell phones even. I mean, they were around all 20 years ago, but still wasn't as, not everybody had one. And texting.
Yes, and there was no
texting,
mini computer in your hand for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, there's lots of different marketing methods come through, and it's been in vogue the last year to do texting. People weren't texting even like 10 years ago. It wasn't like it is today. Everyone reads a text today, where it wasn't like that back in the day. And ringless voicemail blasts, all the technology, it's a blessing, but it's also a curse to those of us that keep getting that car insurance or whatever they're trying to sell us,
Yes, and the, what was it? Open enrollment for insurance. I was ready to kill all those people that were calling me 20 times. That it was like never ending until December, whatever the date was.
Yeah. Oh man. Yep.
So I wanted to
it's a blessing and a curse.
Oh yeah, for sure. I wanted to dive into a little bit, something you've touched on throughout the show was just mindset. Mindset is huge. And I know that you've obviously kind of mastered that whole thing, because each step along the way, you had to develop a different mindset.
Yeah.
Each step you did that. So how do you advise people to, when you're stuck somewhere, it's almost always because of your mindset.
Yeah.
How do they get out of that trap?
Yeah, that's a great thing. And I don't know, I haven't mastered it. To say I've mastered it is not true. We all have our ceilings, right? We all have these false limiting beliefs that like, that's as high as we can go. We can't go beyond that. So any progress that I've made in that arena, it's probably been because I've surrounded myself with people who have exhibited or shown me that what I thought was true is not true, right? So it's been being around people who are just more successful than me, somebody that has team members, right? That somebody showed me that, it doesn't have to be me. My first person I ever hired, they sent me a mailer and they were trying to do books. They're trying to do books. And I was like, I do my own books. I don't need anybody to do my books. And they convinced me to go to a lunch. And from that lunch, they convinced me to let them try it. My limiting belief was that nobody could do the books as well as me. I needed to do it, need to reconcile everything every month. And that was just holding me back, because when you're doing your own books, if you have to do 10 transactions a month, my goodness, like how much heavy is that going to be in your books? But they convinced me to let them try it. And lo and behold, from that, they were so much better than me. So my mindset was expanded at that point. And then every single team member along the way. So, I mean, surround yourself with people who are doing more than you, who are more than you from a standpoint of like their growth. So you can have more of that growth mindset versus the limited mindset. Because we all have it. I have it. I have my limits. We all have them. It's normal. It's just where are they,
Yeah, I think you're right. We all have that. And as we cross over one threshold, we come up on another one. And I think that leads us into another important point, which is mentors. If you don't have mentors, you are never going to grow. You just aren't. And you need those mentors to be there for, not only because they are someplace where you're aspiring to get to, but they've overcome a mindset perhaps that you need to overcome, a limiting belief.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this quote from, I think it's the movie's The Edge, with that bear. Do you remember the bear thing?
No.
But Okay. I forget who's in it, right? It's been so long since I've seen it, but the guy, he's out there in the woods and all this stuff. And Anthony Hopkins. It's Anthony Hopkins.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And he says this line in there. He says, "What one man can do, another can do. Say it with me," and he makes the guy tell him what one man can do, another can do. And I think that's absolutely true. If somebody is doing it in this world, it's possible for you to do it because they are the same as you at one point. Now, you might need to go through a sequence of steps to do it, but if somebody can do it, you can absolutely do it. And it takes that first step of seeing somebody and believing that it's possible, and then believe it's possible for you, especially YouTube University these days, right? Like I ask people like, man, how did you do that? And they say YouTube, because it's YouTube. And if somebody can do it, you can do it too. And so just believing that it's possible, seeing that it's possible, and then just taking the steps that other person did to be successful and just replicating that. And you can do it too with anything, really.
I can't leave this show without talking about marketing, which is one of my favorite topics.
Yeah.
So you mentioned pay-per-click and ads and things like that. So that's definitely one piece of marketing. But what are some of the other marketing strategies that you use today to generate leads?
Yeah, no, our staples, our bread and butter is still direct mail. Even in this digitalized, I mean, it's still our direct mail, right? And so direct mail is still a staple. PPC and SEO certainly are. So those online methods certainly are. And besides that, so those are kind of like the bread and butter. That's where we get the majority of your business. That's where we're getting our volume, if you will. Now there's stuff outside of that we've been trying, just like everyone else. We've worked on the cold calling. We've tested out the cold calling. We do the text messaging and things. So that stuff for us is not the core or the major. It's not a lot of volume, but we do get deals from them, and we do get deals from some networking. But our core is still that direct mail and online efforts. That's still our core.
Yeah, direct mail is just never going to go out of style because it's the way you reach off-market deals.
I think so. I mean, it still is for us. And until it stops working, we're going to keep hitting it. We're going to keep working it. And I would say this too. I mean, there's lots of different marketing methods, and they do all work as long as you work them consistently. But it comes down to, a lot of people think certain marketing methods aren't working, but they got to ask themselves, almost more importantly, how are they working those leads? How are they following up? How are they approaching those sellers? Are they answering the phone live? Are they continuing to follow up with people regardless of what the people say, right? Are you still going to hit them until they sell that property? And are you going to have that human effect? Are you going to have that approach? How are you approaching those people, right? Are you becoming like a friend so that they'll like share with you what's going on and you listen to them, or when they tell you, no, I'm not interested in selling the house, and then like you just go away, right? So I think that's equally as important as how you got the lead in the first place, which the marketing is how you're treating that lead moving forward. Because I have some reps that are just like, whatever, they said they're not going to sell. And some reps that are like relentless with their follow-up, and they get more deals magically, right? So not magic.
I believe that wholeheartedly because I've run into that with probate leads where every now and then you get somebody that's upset because I've worked probates for years. And it became a mission for me to turn those people around. So I would say to them something like, I'm sorry you're upset, but we're able to help so many people that inherited an unwanted property, maybe that needs a lot of work. And then I'll continue the conversation a little bit. And my goal is always to get them to let me keep them on the list.
Yeah.
That's my goal. And I have to look back over it, and I'll just keep having the conversation, asking them questions. If they've got it listed on the MLS, then I'll say, you'll probably sell it on the MLS, but could I be your plan B? Can I keep you on my list just in case? Sure. But it's a whole rapport building thing after they've said no. And it's like, I just can't leave it at no. I just can't do it.
That's so smart, and treating it like a relationship, treating them like a real human being. One of my acquisition managers was telling me recently that there was a guy the guy was like, no, I don't want to sell the house, but they got talking about a common interest, which is Traeger smokers. He smokes stuff. So he's like, they're really good friends. They're going to a class in the next couple of months about, smoking. I mean, I say good friends, they're acquaintances now, right? And they're gonna go to this class. And my rep says this, he really does enjoy the conversation and everything he's having with him. But he says, hey, if that guy's ever selling, he's selling to me.
He's selling to me. Yeah.
He's absolutely going to, right? If they go to they're talking Traegers and they go to a Traeger smoking class together, like they're totally gonna, that guy's never gonna sell to anybody else, right? Because he's made like a acquaintance and a friendship out of that. But I think we hear no a lot and they're like, oh, whatever, I'm gonna go away. So, there's somebody's gonna get that deal eventually.
So, and I think if you want to develop one superpower, I think that's it. It's building rapport with sellers. Because if you can do all the marketing in the world, but if you cannot build rapport with that seller, your chances are pretty much zero of getting the deal.
Yeah. or hire somebody that has that superpower too. Because if you're just like, I don't like people, I don't want to hear about their weekend, I don't want to talk to them, I'm just an introvert. Hire somebody who loves people. Because I have some reps right now who their wife is like, hey, this is his greatest job ever. He's like, pinch me when I get to go to work and get paid for this. Like, I get to go and meet new friends and just go sit on somebody's doorstep and talk about whatever. Like, that's not work to them, right? But if that's work to you, then don't do it. Have somebody else do it. Don't do it.
That's great advice. Yeah. So we should clarify that if that's not you, then you need to hire someone that can be that person, because that skill is critical in this business.
Amen. And I was lucky enough that I recognized early that I liked that, and I liked people and I was genuinely interested in them. So I was able to naturally do that conversion piece better. But the other stuff I didn't like as well. But if you know that's not you, you do the other pieces and build an acquisition around you. Have an acquisition person you hire. You might need to hire them earlier.
Earlier,
like not early, but earlier than somebody that like me. I heard them last, right?
Yeah.
You hate that stuff.
No, I agree with that completely. And you're wise to know where your strengths and your skills lie in your business, and then do those things. Don't do the other things. Well, Andy, I want to close out today by asking Pete, if you have final advice for people that want to be Andy McFarland. They're stuck down here. They can't see a path to really growing. What advice do you have for them?
Oh my goodness, they want to be me. It might not be as glorious as you think it is to be me. You're probably a good you. I would say that you're probably a good you. Yeah. I mean, this might be just trite, but like, you can do it. You really can, right? You might think that like, well, I don't know how I can get from here to there. The days are short. You can do it though. Like, don't think you're going to get there in a day, but if you take consistent action, you can move there and move toward progress towards your goal. And I would also tell you too, because oftentimes I think we find ourselves in the moment we think we're looking at everyone else, especially with social media. We're comparing ourselves to other people. We're getting down on ourselves, right? Which I think that's an epidemic almost in our today's day and age. But I would ask you to look back and think of the times when you wanted what you have now. And we don't think of that very often, but right now you have some things that look back when you wanted exactly what you have right now, and be grateful for that and live in that moment, and then recognize that, okay, there's things I can work towards in the future, but some gratitude for what you have now. So you had in your life, you've had progress, and you will continue to have progress, right? So just be grateful for what you have now while you're working towards that which you want to have, and you can have that. Just take consistent action towards it. Find other people who've done what you want to do, and just do what they've done, and just move forward consistently. So I don't know. Hopefully that helps somebody.
Enjoy the journey.
And enjoy the journey. Absolutely. Because many of you probably have known people who are suffered or have maybe passed away from this recent pandemic or other things in life, and recognize that like when that happens, it put things into perspective. Because oftentimes we might be so focused every day on business or money or our situation, but recognizing that when somebody passes away, and if you've had somebody recently in your life pass away, you can close your eyes and recognize that what mattered in that moment, it wasn't the money, it wasn't any material things. It was all about, people and relationships and who they'd become. So just try to keep that perspective while we need to live in this world and work towards business goals and things like that. But recognize what's important. So like Sharon said, enjoy the journey because the days are short, really,
Yeah, days are short. Well, Andy, thanks so much for coming back on the show. Let's don't have it be this long again between shows. It's always a pleasure having you on, and it's been so much fun watching you grow, because I truly do remember those other podcasts. You're always a great guest, and I appreciate that. And I want to give a shout out to all the listeners too that show up week after week. I appreciate you, and both Andy and I would appreciate it if you would go over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. But I will see you guys same time, same place next week. Bye for now.